The Memphis Grizzlies just had one of their best offensive performances of the season, but it wasn't just because of one player. Coming up on Locked On Grizzlies, I'm going to tell you why a bunch of different pieces played big roles in what was one of the Grizzlies' best offensive performances of the season.
You are Locked On Grizzlies, your daily Memphis Grizzlies podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to Locked On Grizzlies. I am your host, Michael Cole, beat reporter for the Commercial Appeal, covering the Memphis Grizzlies, where I've been now since around Christmas time in December. So came here, joined the beat, and a lot of good things have happened since then. That time since Christmas is where you can mark where a lot of turnarounds start to happen for the Grizzlies right after a 3-game losing streak in that stretch, and Morant returned and they took off, won 11 games in a row, and now they are the number 2 seed in the Western Conference. So first of all, thank you for making Locked On Grizzlies your first listen every day. And remember, Locked On Grizzlies is free and available on YouTube and everywhere else you get your podcasts. So today's episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. Check out prizepicks.com and use your promo code NBA or go to your app store and download the app today. Prize Picks is your daily fantasy made easy. So again, that's your promo code NBA, and go to your app. You go to your app store, whether that's the Google Play Store or the iPhone App Store, you download the app, and Prize Picks, it's your daily fantasy made easy. Today I'm running solo again by myself for the third time this week. Sean Coleman, our co-host, who will be joining us next week, is on vacation right now, a much-deserved vacation, that is. Sean's been doing a great job with Locked On Grizzlies, and I'm just excited to join him and to help him along in this journey as we continue to make Locked On Grizzlies your go-to podcast for Grizzlies coverage. But the Grizzlies are one of their best offensive performances of the seasons against a New Orleans Pelicans team, as I mentioned yesterday, is playing great defense lately. They've had one of the best defenses since the All-Star break. They switched their lineup around, moved Jackson Hayes into the starting lineup at the 4 spot. Jackson Hayes is 6'11", 7-foot guy, long wingspan, and you put him beside Jonas Valanciunas, you get some really big size. Now, Brandon Ingram, their talented small forward scorer, did not play in this game. Tony Snell replaced him, but Tony Snell's still a capable 3-and-D type of player. Then you had C.J. McCollum, Herb Jones, one of the best rookie defenders in the NBA. A very talented team, not a team to overlook, but the Grizzlies, it started with the offense. In my story with the Commercial Appeal on commercialappeal.com, I mentioned at the top of my story that this game started at 6:30 because it was a nationally televised game on TNT, and TNT bumps the time up a little bit. The Grizzlies usually play at 7 o'clock when they're at home at FedEx Forum. So if you missed that announcement, or if you came in late, or whatever the case may be, if you got there at 7 o'clock, if you tuned in and turned your TV on at 7 o'clock expecting the Grizzlies game to start at the typical time, you missed a 29-9 lead. The Grizzlies jumped out fast. And a big part of that was Desmond Bane. Seems like since we've started these Locked On podcast episodes this week, Desmond Bane has been in fuego. He's one of the hottest players on the team, and he just had 22 points. So 22 points gives him his third consecutive game of 20 or more points. To put that in perspective to where he's come from, is Desmond Bane had 4 games before that where he didn't top 20 points in either of those games. So now he's looking more like the Desmond Bane the team has seen most of the season. But it wasn't just Desmond Bane. Morant, 24 points. He led the team in scoring, of course, flirted with a triple-double. He had 24 points, 8 rebounds, 8 assists, but The game was just too out of hand. The Grizzlies won this game. They put up 132 points, 132 to 113, and the game was just out of hand. There wasn't a point in this game outside of maybe the opening moments, and the Pelicans made a couple of nice runs where they tried to get back into the game, and the Grizzlies just didn't let them. So a 132 to 111 win that is for the Grizzlies in this game. So they beat them by 21 points. The lead was well over 30 in the third quarter, but a different pieces to this offensive onslaught that I just mentioned. You had three players: John Morant, 24 points; Desmond Bain, 22 points; Jaren Jackson Jr., 22 points. Three players with more than 20 points. 42 fast break points was the number. 42 fast break points. That is a franchise record. I believe 23 in the first half was a season high, and they just picked up right where they left off. 23 fast points in the first half, 19 fast break points in the second half to end with 42, which was a franchise record. And the shooting was great too. The shooting, just to touch on the shooting there, just 16 made three-pointers in this game. I believe they had 11 made threes in the first half. And one thing that stood out to me is I get to these games usually 2 hours before, try to get there around 2 hours before. And as I got there today, after we had talked with the coaches and our media pregame availability and whatnot, I go to the court, just to see who's hanging around, what's going on. And I see two players. I see DeAnthony Melton, I see Jaren Jackson Jr. First, Jaren Jackson Jr. out there by himself working with assistant coach Darko Rajakovic, who is known as, one of the best developmental coaches in his role. He does a lot of the developmental work with these players, and a lot of the players on the team credit him for what he's done in terms of helping, develop them. Desmond Bain, I've talked to him in the past where he talked about, Darko and the work they put in this summer. And then you go back to Jaren Jackson Jr., they're working, and Jaren Jackson Jr. is he's coming around screens, he's shooting three-pointers, and they're going all around the three-point line. And early in the game, Jaren Jackson Jr. comes out, he's shooting, and boom, nails a three-pointer early on in the game to help the Grizzlies get out to that 29-9 start. Then same thing for DeAnthony Melton. He gets going early, finishes in double figures, and I believe there were 6 Grizzlies in double figures. Jaren Jackson and DeAnthony Melton were 2 of those. So the Grizzlies put in the work, getting out there early, getting on the court, putting in those extra reps where most people don't see, maybe a couple fans, in the crowd at that point when Melton and Jaren Jackson Jr. were getting those shots up. So, and credit to them for putting in that extra work, but it obviously paid off. Both of them had really big games in this game. And we talked about, the free throw shooting in the past. I've highlighted free throw shooting and three-point shooting as two things, that will be big determining factors in how far this team go. The Grizzlies shot 20 of 24 from the free throw line. So let me just tell you this. Like, when the Grizzlies are making 16 three-pointers, when the Grizzlies are going 20 or 24 from the line, there just aren't many teams that stand a chance. And you look at the Pelicans and you say, oh, they were 27 and 37 going to this game. And I say, throw all of that out of the window. This is a team that since the All-Star break has been hot. This is a team in their loss right before this game, second consecutive loss for them. And the loss right before this one, they lost to the Nuggets. The Nuggets beat them in overtime. And it was a really tough game. Before that, they beat the Kings. They beat the Suns. They beat the Lakers. They beat the Jazz. Held 3 of those teams under 100 points. The only one that scored over 100 was the Suns, and the Suns scored 102 points. That's how good this defense is played. And the Grizzlies blew the top off of them. I mean, a 44-point first quarter, 33-point quarter, 35-point quarter. Those first 3 quarters, it was unheard of. They put up 112 points through 3 quarters. So the Grizzlies literally could have not scored a point. They could have not scored a point in that fourth quarter and still won by 1 point. But it's a good thing that, the offense did hold its own in the fourth quarter because, you got Morant didn't play in the fourth quarter. Desmond Bain played a few minutes in the fourth, Jaren Jackson as well. So you didn't tax the starters in this game. A lot of those bench guys who haven't played a lot lately, Yee Spahn, Jared Culver, Xavier Tillman, all of those guys got some minutes in this game. So you just look at what the Grizzlies offense was done, and they're cooking. They're cooking right now. That game was a much needed performance after what happened in Houston. But as well as the offense played, it took the defense a little bit more time to hit its groove. As well as the offense got off to that great start, the defense didn't start as strong. But one thing you may hope you can hit your groove with is prize picks. If you're looking for a daily fantasy option, you go to the NBA, and then you need to try the award-winning app Prize Picks. Prize Picks is the daily fantasy made easy. And look, let me just tell you, speaking from experience, I love it. So we know you'll love it too. Prize Picks is easy to use, and you can get fast withdrawals. That's not the case with every, one of these apps. They don't all offer fast withdrawals. So it's easy to use. You get the fast withdrawals. The props can be anything like points, points scored, rebounds, and even something like steals. So Prize Picks also has, options like college basketball, where we're in March Madness. So you can take advantage of that. College football, NFL, MLB, where we're in a lockout right now, but sooner or later, you'll be able to take advantage of that as well in MLB, soccer, MMA, and even more. So, as we mentioned earlier, the hot offer right now, users get $50 free. $50 free if a player in your first Prize Picks entry scores a single point. All the player has to do is score a single point, and that's $50 free for you. But all you have to do is use the code NBA. So use the code NBA, sign up today, and you'll get $50 free if your first Prize Picks entry scores a single point. Defensively, the Grizzlies, it took some time in this game, I think. They, as good as the offense started off, and we mentioned it was 29-9 before you could blink, before the halfway point of that first quarter. But I believe the Pelicans, the Pelicans still scored 34 points in that first quarter because it was C.J. McCollum. It was Devontae Graham. C.J. McCollum, let's talk about him first. He's one of those guys who has become known as a Grizzlies killer. We mentioned yesterday 60-30-point games, over 22 points per game against the Grizzlies in his career. And man, it was looking like one of those nights. It was looking like one of those nights when CJ came out, he got hot, and he's on the baseline. He does the turnaround fadeaway, and the Grizzlies got tight defense over, and it just doesn't matter. It just doesn't matter because it was buckets just raining down from the top of the key, left corner, right corner, three-point line. C.J. McCollum was in his bag. He was deep in his bag, and he capped off the first half with a buzzer beater because why not? So even though at that point the Grizzlies were up 19, 77-58, but C.J. McCollum was in his bag. And then you had Devontae Graham. We mentioned that, when the Grizzlies got out to the 29-9 start, the Pelicans cut it all the way down to 6. And Devontae Graham hitting three-pointers was a big reason why. I believe he had 4 three-pointers in the first half, and he helped keep the Pelicans in that game. So the Grizzlies had to make some adjustments. And so when I think of Taylor Jenkins, Grizzlies coach that is, I just think of him as one of those mastermind guys who really, dives into the X's and O's portion of the game. He really likes that part. He feeds off of that part. So you wonder how is he going to adjust when C.J. McCollum comes out and scores 25? How is he going to adjust when Devontae Graham comes out and he's hitting all these three-pointers and it's looking like you have no answer? Well, first, I think the main thing that Taylor Jenkins tried to do with CJ McCollum is he showed him a lot of different bodies. Before you even get to showing a guy defensive looks, a nice way is to show him different bodies. Now, you may be saying, what's special about, guarding him with different players? Well, let me explain it like this. Ja Morant got the first call. Ja Morant is, 6'3". He's a slender guy. So he's about 175, 174 pounds. When Ja Morant was guarding CJ McCollum, you get the quickness. He got a block on CJ McCollum when CJ went to the rim. He got the chase down block on him and things like that. But CJ can get to his spots using his strength when it comes to a guy like that. So then you had Desmond Bane guarding him. Desmond Bane, bulkier guy. So a little bit harder to get to his spots. But CJ is very good in the screen and roll. And Desmond Bane isn't as long. So when he gets to those spots where he wants to get to, it's hard for Bane to really contest and to alter his shots. So then you think about a guy like Zaire Williams. These aforementioned players are players who guarded CJ McCollum in this game, by the way. But Morant got the first call. Zaire Williams got his pick at him as well. And I think of Zaire Williams, I think of him just as a younger defender, had some really good moments, always had some really good moments, shows really good flashes of what could be a, eventual elite defender on this team. And I think, the strength of CJ McCollum, comes into play there. So when the bench comes in, the first guy I saw get the assignment on CJ McCollum wasn't DeAnthony Melton like you may have thought, like I thought when I asked Taylor Jenkins in pregame, but it was Kyle Anderson. Kyle Anderson was also someone that I mentioned because, you think of Kyle Anderson as a slower guy, the whole slow-mo thing. Kyle Anderson is smart. He's one of the smarter defenders, I think, on his team. He's a great position defender, and he has really good hands. His hands are fast. His hands are quick. We saw it. The perfect example was the game against the Bulls right after the break, the second game after they played the Timberwolves, and DeMar DeRozan has the ball with a chance to, I believe, give the Bulls the lead or make it a one-point game or something of that sort. And DeRozan backs he's posting Kyle Anderson up. And as soon as he turns around, Kyle Anderson, quick hands, grabs the ball out of his hands, rips it. And the result was DeMar DeRozan being ejected because he thought he was fouled. But it really was just a great, smart defensive play. So Kyle Anderson got CJ McCollum, and you just watched him. He was able to use his physicality to bust through some of those screens and do things like that. And, of course, then, DeAnthony Melton. DeAnthony Melton, who I think is probably the best wing defender right now with Dillon Brooks out. And he got his pick at him as well. So not only did, they throw different people at him, the big adjustment was throwing different coverages as well. They started blitzing CJ McCollum. They started trapping CJ McCollum. They started just throwing a bunch of different looks at him. He'd see one body on one possession. Next body, he goes to the pick and roll, and he thinks, the big man is probably going to hedge or he's going to, get another guy switched onto him. It didn't happen. They're running two people at him, forcing the ball out of his hands. And the result was CJ McCollum only scoring 7 points in the second half. Now, he did not play in the fourth quarter. I will say that. But the 7 points that he scored in the third quarter looked much different than the 25 he scored in the first half. He was just too comfortable. CJ got wherever he wanted in that first half. So the shout out to Taylor Jenkins for those adjustments he's made. One, throwing different bodies at him. When you throw different bodies at a guy, it changes the way he can attack a defense. And that takes him out of his comfort zone more than anything. For example, if he sees Ja Morant 5 possessions in a row, he's probably getting used to putting his shoulder in his body, getting to a certain spot on the court and just turning around and shooting the ball. But then when you put Desmond Bane on him, he can't just put his shoulder into Desmond Bane's chest. So he has to, use different moves and things like that. And you're just changing a guy's flow up. You're changing his rhythm. And all of those little details matter when guarding someone. And I think Taylor Jenkins hit on those things just to slow CJ McCollum down enough so to the point where he didn't, get the Pelicans back into this game and, made it one of those games where it could have turned out like the Rockets game or that Timberwolves game where the Grizzlies end up, blowing some leads. But we're talking about really good defense, right? But now let me tell you about some really good chocolate. And that chocolate is Built Bar, because Built Bar has mint brownie, coconut almond, and this month there's this new white chocolate cookies and cream that you really want to try out, because the thing that I love about Built Bar is Built Bar prioritizes good taste. It has to taste good for me before we even get into the health factors. It has to taste good. And Built Bar prioritizes that. Then they do their magic as far as making something as healthy as it can be, half as many calories and just as much chocolate as the candy bars. You know why? Because Built Bars are covered in 100% real chocolate. So you just go to built.com, use the promo code LOCKED15 and get 15% off of your order. So that's built.com, use the promo code LOCKED15 and you can get 15% off of your order. So the last point that we're going to touch on here from this game, this big win, 132-111 over the New Orleans Pelicans, was, I think, the mental toughness of the Grizzlies stood out in this game. So the mental toughness, you may be saying, yeah, there wasn't a lot of adversity. This was a wire-to-wire win. The Grizzlies had a 20-point lead, less than 6 minutes into the game. Yes, all of that is true. All of that is true. But it was impressive to me. What was impressive was how when the Grizzlies did lead 29-9, the Pelicans got within 6 near the end of the first quarter. As soon as the Pelicans hit that three-pointer in the last 2 minutes of the first quarter to get within 6 points, the Grizzlies got a three-pointer from, I believe it was D'Anthony Melton on the other end, to extend the lead back to 9. 10-point lead after one. And then the same thing happens in the second quarter, early in the second quarter. Pelicans get back within 6 again around the 8-minute mark. The Grizzlies closed that quarter out on, I believe it was a 24-11 run. So straight blasted them the rest of the quarter. Then you talk about the third quarter. They had a 19-point lead at half, yes, but the foot did not come off the gas pedal. 35-26 advantage in the third quarter. And this was a big development to watch, because we saw the Rockets game. We saw, how that was one of the worst losses this season for the Grizzlies. The Grizzlies had a 13-point lead against that team. And then we saw when they came out of the break and they played the Timberwolves. 15-point lead, blown. Even in the next game after the Timberwolves, when they beat the Chicago Bulls, 17-point lead got down to 1 point. So when the Grizzlies were up 29-9 and that lead was trimmed all the way down to 6, those thoughts, I thought about those things. You probably did too. You're probably thinking, oh man, we've blown a couple leads lately. What's going to happen? Well, the way the Grizzlies responded, it said a lot about this team, I think. And Taylor Jenkins talked about it himself, just, the calmness of this team, the coolness. They've been in these situations all season long, and they played like it. It's for the players, and this is, Taylor Jenkins said something of the sort as well. Just the main thing for them is understanding, it's a game of runs. There are flows within a basketball games. You're going to have, Devontae Graham getting hot from 3 and making 4 3-pointers at time. You're going to have C.J. McCollum, when you have him bodied up on the baseline and you jump high as you can, and he still makes that turnaround fadeaway jumper, pure net, right over your hands. You're going to have some of those moments. It's not much you can do about it. But what you can do is control how you respond, control how you execute, and that's what the Grizzlies did each time the Pelicans threatened to get in this game, because I didn't think the Pelicans played bad offensively. I think the Grizzlies just executed at such a high level on their offense, and then they were able to lock in defensively to the point where they put that game out of reach. And we're talking about, mental toughness of the team. But I also want to point out the mental toughness of one of the players. So we touched on Desmond Bain. Out of the All-Star break, 4 of 19 on his first 19 three-pointers after the break. And he had all these low-scoring games, 4 consecutive games where he finished below his scoring average for the season. So today was our first chance. Yesterday after the game was our first chance to talk with Desmond Bain, about how he's been playing. And so I asked him, your mindset. I said, Desmond Bain, what's your mindset been like as you went through this stretch where, you had 4 games, that you scored below 20 points. And then the last 3 games, he scored more than 20 points. And Desmond Bain's response was, same. Mindset doesn't change. So, and here's the exact quote right here. He said, my mindset never changes. The result is the result. I just stay true to myself, stay true to my work habits. Water always finds its levels. That's a shooter's mentality. That's that, in football, you want your cornerback, you want your wide receiver to have that mentality. You want your cornerback when he gets beat on a play to say, oh, that play is over. Next play is what matters. You want your wide receiver when he drops a pass, okay, I'll get it back on the next one. Desmond Bain, as a shooter, has the right approach. And, he said this a couple times, this season. He said it a couple times. And I think that was just, just listening to him calmly express that, look, basically saying he wasn't worried. He understands, he has that basketball knowledge of, look, sometimes you don't have to change your routine. You don't have to do anything different. The ball just won't fall in certain games. And I think that's what he went through. That's kind of what he explained. And his mental toughness, it's persevered. It's persevered. Now you're looking at Desmond Bain, 3 consecutive games of more than 20 points, and he's hooping. He's hooping. He's playing like one of the most important players on his team. And I think it was good for a national audience, a TNT audience, to see Desmond Bain shine like this as well, because Desmond Bain is a big part of this team's success. We talk about Ja Morant and his paint scoring and things like that. No, don't get me wrong. Ja Morant does a lot of acrobatic stuff in the paint, and I've did a story, about how Steven Adams, contributes to that paint scoring. But another thing is Desmond Bain. I talked to a lot of players All-Star weekend in Cleveland about Desmond Bain. Herb Jones actually was one of those guys, the guy who plays for the Pelicans, and they all were saying he's a shooter. Everyone I asked about Desmond Bain, one thing that came up from each player was shooter. So they know, which means he gets that attention in games, which takes away one defender at least from the paint every single time when Ja Morant is going to drive the ball. They know you cannot leave Desmond Bain because Ja Morant has said it. That's the guy who he's going to look for. And if Desmond Bain's open, it's going to go in more times than not. So Desmond Bain's mental toughness, the team's mental toughness were both big reasons why the Grizzlies persevered in this game and got a wire-to-wire important win over the Pelicans to keep hold of their Western Conference number 2 seed, because right after the Grizzlies won that game, the Warriors came and took care of business against the Clippers. So the lead in the West for the number 2 seed is still half a game. I believe the Warriors have one less win, but they are the same in the loss column as the Grizzlies. But we thank you. Thanks for making Locked On Grizzlies your first listen every day. Tomorrow, we're going to discuss Taylor Jenkins' latest comments on Dillon Brooks. He gave a Dillon Brooks update, but we're going to talk about it more tomorrow. Now, before you leave, make sure you make your second listen Locked On NBA. Locked On NBA is where the experts are covering the biggest stories around the NBA in less than 30 minutes. So we're talking, from the time you get in the car and go to work and come back, or your lunch break, or whenever you like to listen to a podcast. You might like to listen as soon as you get up in the bed. It's less than 30 minutes, and it's free and available wherever you get your podcast. So we appreciate you again for listening to Locked On Grizzlies. Looking forward to you, consistent viewers, just listening and tuning in tomorrow. And I thank you for coming again today to Locked On Grizzlies. I'm your host, DeMichael Cole, and we'll see you soon.